Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Education Month panel discussion for 2022. Our theme for Education Month this year is promoting quality education through healthy minds and bodies. Promoting quality education through healthy minds and bodies. And this theme speaks for itself in terms of reminding us of the critical attention we need to pay to our health, both the health of both our minds and our bodies, if we are, in fact, to maximize quality living. And this is so whether we are children, whether we are parents, whether we are teachers, whether we are educational leaders, we all need to maximize healthy living, both in our minds and our bodies. So we have an interesting panel discussion for you this evening with 4 experts in various areas of wellness. And just a bit to focus us this evening, over the past few years, there has been in Barbados a growing expressed concern about the state of our national health and the rise of NCDs among our population. The World Health Organization has determined that 33% of Barbados's children are overweight. Other data reveal that 73% of our students drink 1 or more sweetened beverages per day, which can translate to 14 teaspoons of sugar for 1 serving. And if we just did the math, we would recognize how much sugar that is that our children are consuming. This level of sugar is alarming and is a cause for concern, particularly since Barbados is is alarming and is a cause for concern, particularly since a Barbados Health of the Nation study in 2015 showed that 1 in 5 persons aged 25 and older has diabetes. This ratio worsens when those over 65 years are also examined. What these results in fact prove is that we at the national level need to pay far greater attention to the health of all of our citizens, and this is particularly so among our most vulnerable population, which is our children. If we are to add value to the quality of life for all of us in Barbados, we must pay attention to our health, the health of our bodies and the health of our minds. While there may be arguments in some quarters as to whether good health begins with the body or whether it begins in the mind, what we can say is that to be healthy, we need both. We need a healthy body to store a healthy mind, and we need a healthy mind with good thoughts and adequate amounts of self-awareness and self-care to maximize the best there is in our bodies. So this evening, we're going to be drilling down into an in-depth discussion about the challenges, the issues, and the best practices surrounding this whole idea of promoting healthy minds and healthy bodies. And as I said earlier, we have a panel, a very interesting panel with us this evening, and I'll be introducing them to you. I'll call their names and I'll be introducing them to you one by one for each of them to give their opening remarks about the topic. My name is Denise Charles, and I am your moderator for this evening, representing the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. Our focused topic this evening is healthy minds and healthy bodies for quality living. Healthy minds and healthy bodies for quality living. We have as our panelists this evening, Janelle Denny, physical education specialist. We have Shauntee Walters, a guidance counselor or mental health professional. We have Dr. Kia Lewis, a general practitioner and a healthy lifestyle advocate. And we have Nicole Griffith, a nutritionist. I'm going to begin with Ms. Janelle Denny. I will introduce her to you, and then she will share for approximately 5 minutes her thoughts on the topic. Janelle Denny holds the position of peripatetic teacher, physical education and sports in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. And she has been a physical educator and sports administrator for over 20 years. In 2007, she graduated with a master's in education in physical education from Alabama A&M University. She has numerous coaching certifications in various sporting disciplines, but despite this, she is committed to becoming more involved in administration and the management of sports to better serve the youth of the nation and holds various accreditations in this area. She has been a long-standing member of the sporting committee of the Barbados Union of Teachers and has worked directly with our national junior athletes in the sport of track and field for many years. For over a decade, she has served as the knapsack committee. She has served on the knapsack committee in various capacities, including championship director. She is now the current chairman of the committee. In addition, she serves as the first vice president of the Physical Education Teachers Association of Barbados and is an avid CrossFitter, dancer, yoga practitioner, and swimmer. Over to you, Janelle, 5 minutes.
Good night to you, Dr. Charles. Good night to the panelists, and good night to everyone joining us this evening. Now, when I thought of this particular topic, I first had to say, what does quality living mean to me? Because it can mean something different to different people. And at the end of the day, I think we have to remember that everything begins with a thought process. So what we think will then guide our beliefs, and then those beliefs guide our actions. The actions that we then take in our lives will define who we are, what we do. Now, those things are made up of many things: what we eat, the relationships we have, what we watch, what we listen to, how we exercise, and what we choose to do with our time. So therefore, some of these things may need adjustments in order to have a quality lifestyle, and some of them may be just fine. But regardless of that, in order to improve, we have to change the attitude towards the importance of whatever it is that we choose to do within our lives. And that change sometimes for people will require a shock, but it most of the time has to be something that is gradual so that you can manage the change better. Because sometimes you have to start by yourselves. Sometimes you may have a support system in order to get you to where you want to be. And you can choose a variety of activities, whether they be self-management or whether you have structured activities with persons in your support system who are helping you. But that management of your lifestyle is critical so that you don't make excuses or give up or rebel, because the inconsistency of our patterns is what will always guide what we're doing in order to continue or to stop. Now, most of the time as well, if you're making that lifestyle change, mistakes will happen. And we have to understand that when we make those mistakes, it's a learning curve, and we have to be able to reflect on what we do in order to get to that quality lifestyle. Now, for me, when I think of how physical education and physical activity fits into the topic, physical education provides that sustainable pathway to healthy lifestyle engagement as it develops the competencies, skills, and attitudes that we want for people to live an active life. And by extension, for those who then want to become athletes, can pursue sporting excellence. For the average person, for every person within our society, being able to have that sustainable pathway to live an active life is what is important. And that's why I believe being physically fit and being physically active is one way for us to ensure that persons have that healthy mindset and that healthy body in order to achieve that quality living that we want to pursue. So I'll stop there for now. And as we continue with the evening, we'll delve a little deeper into some of the other aspects of physical activity and physical education.
Thank you so much, Janelle, for your opening comments. Next up will be Dr. Kia Lewis. Dr. Lewis is a medical doctor, a general practitioner, and a healthy lifestyle advocate. She is passionate about her calling as a healthcare professional and educator. She is a gifted speaker with a wealth of knowledge acquired through her medical training and has had experience presenting in various forums. She's driven by an avid interest in public health and wellness. She seeks to be an agent of change, inspiring persons from all walks of life to maximize their potential through maintaining a healthy and wholesome lifestyle. Her goal is to impact lives through the transfer of accurate, well-researched information, which is specially tailored to the Caribbean setting. Her interactive and thought-provoking presentations offer real and practical solutions to empower persons to revolutionize their health and well-being. She has been a guest speaker at numerous schools, churches, and organizations across the island, hosting health and wellness workshops on a variety of topics. She has also used her online platform to promote these health messages. Dr. Lewis is the current chairperson of the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition and a volunteer with the Barbados Heart and Stroke Foundation. Dr. Lewis, over to you for your comments. 5 minutes. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to engage, to educate, to have discussions surrounding health-related issues. And today we are looking at healthy minds and healthy bodies. And usually in these forums, I am speaking to the development of healthy minds and healthy bodies for children. Of course, this starts with adults. The question that we must ask ourselves on a day-to-day basis is, are we setting ourselves and by extension our children for success? We must understand that the decisions that we are making for ourselves and for our children now is going to affect their health into adulthood and collectively the health of the future of our nation. The health behaviors that we teach our children now, these are the behaviors that they are going to carry forward into adulthood most of the time, and they're going to teach their children. So we are dealing with a multi-generational issue. Both the healthy and the unhealthy habits that our children practice is going to affect them all the way into adulthood. We talked about the statistics, the problem that we are having, and we know that the NCD pandemic is being fueled by a lack of physical activity, by poor diet, and of course, we cannot leave out the fact it's fueled by a lack of a supportive environment. And both adults and children are suffering as a result. When we talk about statistics, we mentioned that yes, 33% of children in Barbados are either overweight or obese, and this is a staggering statistic. But why is it staggering? We know that obesity is linked to the development of non-communicable diseases from a young age. We are at a situation in Barbados where 80% of our deaths are as a result of non-communicable diseases. Things like diabetes, high blood pressure, the cancers. So there's a range of non-communicable diseases that are affecting our population. In fact, 40% of premature adult deaths are as a result of NCDs. So we have a serious problem on our hands, and we have to begin to look at solutions. Like the previous presenter would have said, it's going to take changes, and changes do take time, but it is important that we begin to have these discussions as to how we can move things forward, how we can do things differently. Like we said, we know that this is driven by increased availability, for example, of our high fat, high sugar and sugar sweetened beverages, right? And this is a major issue. When I was younger, I like to say, it was a lot harder to access things like cakes and donuts and so forth. And I'm really not that old. I don't want to age myself. But suffice to say, you can walk into any major supermarket, you can go through any drive-through now, and these things are at our hands. Not only that are at our fingertips, not only that, when we look at physical activity, we know that within the CARICOM member states that less than a third of school-age children actually have the recommended amount of physical activity per week. So we are seeing that combination of an obesogenic environment, that combination of increase in availability of high fat, high calorie, high sugary foods, and then decreased movement. I think that we cannot forget that COVID has also affected this. A lot of children have stayed at home, they have put on weight because they've not been active because of the availability of unhealthy foods and snacks in home. And so as we head into a new term, we're going to need to look to reverse a lot of this. It starts with us. It starts with us personally seeing the need for these changes to take place, how it is affecting our children individually, and then how it is affecting our nation. And then it starts with looking at policy, putting policies in place within our school environment that helps to protect our children. It helps also to protect the workers that are there, believe it or not. And therefore, it provides a supportive environment within which we can flourish. So these are the opening remarks I want to make, and I'm really looking forward to an engaging discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for those remarks, and certainly we will be coming back to you to drill a bit deeper into what you have shared in your opening comments. Next up, we have nutritionist, Ms. Nicole Elliott. Ms. Elliott is currently a member of the Barbados Childhood Obesity Coalition and the Diabetes and Hypertensive Association, and serves as a liaison for the Wellness for Kenya Foundation. Her main duties include participating in health education sessions, community outreaches with a focus on NCD prevention, and the creation and execution of community-based projects geared towards creating awareness and promoting healthy lifestyles. She's also a PAHO community health promoter and has authored the Keep the Culture, Cut the Fat cookbooks for the Diabetes Association of Barbados, which provide healthier alternatives to creating some of the foods we love in the Caribbean. She holds a Master of Science degree in Public Health Nutrition and has completed her fellowship in clinical nutrition. She's currently employed as a human ecology teacher at the Springer Memorial School. She's actively involved in community development and research focused on issues such as food security and nutrition. She's an advocate for the pursuit of healthy lifestyles and is especially passionate about advocating on the behalf of the vulnerable groups in Caribbean societies. So this evening, welcome, Ms. Elliott. Your opening comments?
Good night, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm always passionate, just like Kia, about these type of pursuits, especially when it has to do with health for all. And I just want to be very brief with my opening comments, and it has to do with our team. So we want to improve nutrition through the life cycle. So we don't want to just start when we are older. We want to start from the beginning. So generally, immediately as soon as a child is born, we want to do the breastfeeding. And I know some people think, how is that going to affect meat later on? And so that can affect you as it relates to your weight, how you gain weight, as it relates to your risk for cardiovascular disease and stuff like that. So when you go on further in life, and we can go on to the stage where students are at the stage of primary school, where they're getting school meals, and it may seem like a very insignificant thing, but the meals that you take during that time of your life, between that 5 to 11-year-old stage, will affect you later on when you go on, because the more calories you take in then, the more fats that you're taking at that age, the more sugars you take in that age will determine later on if you may be pre-diabetic early in your early teens, if you may have hypertension in your early teens, which is something that has been seen now in Barbados, which is something that we haven't seen before for a very long time. And of course, diabetes and obesity. And so those things don't only affect your nutritional health, but they also affect your way you interact with others. So a lot of persons know you would find have depression, and that depression is not caused because of obesity only or for emotional issues they may have at home or at work, but those issues stem from nutritional issues that they may have, because food is similar to a drug. People use food in different ways and for different reasons. And so we want to be very sure that we are taking in foods that are helpful to our bodies and not containing things that prevent us from being able to go forward and be successful in our lives. As simple things such as a drink, we may see that as something very insignificant, but some drinks, even if you read the labels now, you will see that some of them carry warnings, and those warnings may say, hey, this contains XYZ, and this drink can cause hyperactivity, it can cause anxiety. And so imagine you consuming those things alone from early age. By the time you get into adulthood or you get into the middle age group, you have already started showing signs of depression and anxiety. And we know now that a lot of persons, because of what we have been through in the COVID period, have been having very difficult time in handling depression. A lot of persons have nutrient deficiencies because they weren't able to purchase things due to the lack of income. And so those things we need to look at when we're looking at nutrition, and not just the food and what we eat only, but how we eat it, when we eat it, and what we're selecting to eat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those opening comments. And we're going to move right along to our final panelist this evening. We have Shauntee Walters, a guidance counselor. She has been a secondary school guidance counselor for the past 21 years. In this capacity, she interacts on a daily basis with students and their families. She has taught health and family life education for this period of time and is well placed to speak to how mental health is addressed within the school population. She has done her undergraduate studies in sociology with psychology and holds a master's in counseling psychology. Ms. Walters, over to you for your opening comments.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you to look at how mental health is addressed within the school population. So when we think of mental health, the most used definition comes, as we know, from the World Health Organization, and their definition speaks to being in a state of well-being which enables us to cope with the stresses of life, realize our abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to our community. The same World Health Organization sees adolescence as a crucial period of development where social and emotional habits are important for our mental well-being. And they need to learn to develop these habits, including adopting healthy sleep patterns, exercising regularly, developing coping skills, problem-solving skills, interpersonal skills, and learning to manage emotions. And we, as the adults in the society, we need to make sure that we create protective and supportive environments for them in their families, at school, and in the wider community. Now, within our schools, our secondary schools, and our primary schools to some extent, the guidance counselors, through their work and through health and family life education, are ably addressing many of these concerns. Health and family life education is divided into 4 broad themes. These are self and interpersonal relationships. And here, as the name implies, it addresses aspects surrounding self and relationships with others, so self-esteem, self-awareness, resolving and managing conflict, issues that arise in families, refusal skills, decision-making, and so many other things. Sexuality and sexual health is the second theme, and here we look at sex and gender, gender roles, how culture impacts gender. We look at puberty and adolescence, the physical, emotional, and psychological changes taking place there, and really how to navigate that period well. And then again, we look at decision-making, conflict resolution, assertiveness, but as it is specific to sexuality and sexual health, acknowledging that our sexuality is an important component of our lives and will be expressed in various ways across our lifespan. The third theme is eating and fitness, and we look at how our bodies are made and how they function, why eating is important, and how the content of our meals can serve as medicine or can serve to be detrimental to us. We look at diets and healthy diets, the foods to eat, the foods to avoid, how to prepare meals, how to add value to the meals that we have. And we also look at the importance of exercise and consistent exercise, not just as a weight loss measure, but as a part of your lifestyle. The fourth theme is managing the environment. And here we look at the individual and collective responsibility that we all have to take care of our environment. This may start with something as simple as keeping our classrooms clean, keeping our area in the classroom clean, placing garbage in appropriate receptacles, using less plastic, drinking more water, these things. Now, if you throw your mind back to the definition from the World Health Organization, we can see how HFLE helps us to realize our potential, helps us to manage stressors in life, helps us to live and learn well and contribute effectively to our societies. The final aspect in terms of mental health within schools that I wish to mention quickly and address is the role of the guidance counselors. Now, really, the guidance counselors are a major resource within our schools, which is not always acknowledged or recognized for the work that is done. And I must say that my colleagues are highly qualified. They're skilled, they're trained, and they're competent to provide mental health interventions for our students and to access services on their behalf. Now, if I had to identify or sum the role of the guidance counselor in one word, that word would be advocacy. As guidance counselor, I advocate for my students in every forum. I stand in the gap for them. I sit in meetings where they may not be allowed or where they may not be invited on their behalf. I serve as a connector between them and their family, the school administration, the social service agencies, and the other agencies around the island. And I'm using the word I, but this is true to all the guidance counselors within our secondary schools. So along with teaching and administering the AHFLE program within the schools, we also provide targeted individual and group counseling for our students in all areas. We provide for them a safe space where they can be honest, where they will not be judged while they're working through their particular concerns. Our goal really is to ensure that our students are able to come to school and have the best experience possible without any intervening variable, whatever it may be, whether it is an issue at home, a welfare need for food, clothing, shelter, self-esteem issue, need to learn a particular skill, any of those things that I would have mentioned previously as it came to HFLE, we provide intervention for them. Individually, we work with them one-on-one. We do small group intervention, usually 6 to 8 students, or a large group intervention, which could be the entire class, it could be the year group, it could be the entire school, depending on what the intervention is. And this is done many times through collaborative relationships with students and their families, with school personnel, with social service agencies, and community resources. So in many ways, the guidance counselors are those working to keep our students emotionally and psychologically safe, well, and happy. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Okay, thank you so much for those comments. And this evening, I want us to bear in mind, I want the panel to bear in mind, and those of us who are viewing, that we are really creating this evening a tapestry. We are looking at the whole idea of health and wellness from several perspectives and several angles, and we really want to see the diverse views of the individuals that we have in the panel this evening in terms of how their particular area of expertise weighs in to what is critical and what we need to know critically, even as they will still complement each other in what they say. So we are marrying the physical with the nutritional, with the mental, ready to see what is necessary to emerge the best life as we all seek to live quality lives, and particularly for the benefit of better education or quality education. I am going to direct my first question this evening to our nutritionist, Ms. Elliott, because I'm really concerned. I loved what you said, and I'm really concerned about our current culture or our current food environment, or what we could say our food culture. For those of you who may spend a lot of time on social media, you would recognize, particularly over the pandemic, that there were many food outlets which have sprung up over the past 2 years. Many food outlets, many people are selling food. You know, perhaps we could say that Barbados has a rich street food culture. Many people sell food by the streets. You know, in many communities, you can find food easily, apart from the established fast food restaurants or the established fine dining restaurants. And then, of course, we also cook our meals. But I want you to speak to us this evening, Ms. Elliott, about our food culture. How would you describe the current food environment in Barbados? How do Barbadians seem to feel about food? Because I think how we feel about food will impact the choices that we make, what we see other people doing, what we see online, what we see advertised on social media, what seems to be popular and what seems to be trending will impact the practices that we put into place when it comes to eating, what we should eat or what we shouldn't eat. So I want you to talk to us this evening about what you see as the dominant food environment or food culture in Barbados, and how is this impacting the choices that we make when it comes to eating what is best for us.
Thank you, Ms. Charles, for your question. And it's a very important question because before, when we hear food culture, we think about cocoa and flying fish, we think about all those cultural items that we would have grown up knowing about. But our food culture has changed so drastically. And during the pandemic, for the last 3 years, that environment has taken a huge turn because, one, we had a lot more time to spend on social media. We had a lot more time to spend at home. And for those persons who would have been getting meals when they go to work, or maybe have getting meals when they go to school, those persons now are at home and they're responsible for their own cooking. They're responsible for finding their own meals while they're at home. So those persons now are purchasing fast foods, those ones were available, maybe these small cook shops that were available. And those persons preparing those meals there are going to look to media to see what is trending. And it's funny enough, when you look into the classroom, a lot of times those students when they come into a classroom, or if you see them in a workshop, or if you see their parents online for any particular reason, a lot of the times things that they want to prepare are things that are trending online. So as much as we don't want to admit it, I think online has been influencing the way how we eat here in the Caribbean. So the Western way of doing things has not impacted our way of doing things. And so we find instead of having macaroni pie, we don't want Alfredo and chicken or shrimp. Instead of wanting instead of doing cocoa and flan fish, people now want grits and shrimp. So our cultural shift has changed so much. So we have gone away from eating the traditional items that we usually would have eaten before, and now we're eating those things that are more processed. And so because of that, we will find that there's going to be more nutritional issues because one, we weren't accustomed to eating that way. Our lifestyle in terms of how we work, the pace of life where we live is not similar to the pace for life for persons who we are imitating that type of food culture from. And then we have now, especially in our girls, we have a lot of girls who may have things like PCOS, endometriosis. We have things like that we would have never have heard about before in this large scale, but now are manifesting themselves more so in our girls or our females in the Caribbean. Because one, our food, the way how we eat and we think about what we're going to eat and how we eat it and what we do after we eat it has changed so drastically that now we have so many health issues when it relates to women, even cancers. Those things are influenced by the things that you eat, and because we are eating so many processed foods and we don't know what are in every processed food, we have that issue now where we have girls who we see and who are we have young girls who know how to now say, hey, I may not be able to get kids later because I'm not able to control my diabetes that is caused by insulin resistance because of my PCOS, which I need to keep in check through my food, and because the environment in which I live in don't give me those free wills to be able to say, hey, this food is easily accessible, water is easily accessible, fruits are easily accessible and affordable to me, so I'm able to control this, and so I'll be possibly able to live a better life later on. Whereas now we have to use medications to do stuff that we could have curtailed at the beginning. So it tells later on, and so for a lot of people, it doesn't look like anything's happening to you right away. But then you have those teenage girls or those those young adults who live a good life at the beginning and everybody's happy, and then coming on into the 30s and the 40s, then you start to see all these health issues manifesting. And the same thing happened in our boys. But obviously, boys take longer to go to the doctor, so you figure out things later with them.
Okay, well, I want you to stick up in there because I'm going to come back to looking at this whole question of gender differences in their approach to food consumption. So don't go too deeply into that as yet. We'll be coming right back to you. But I want to pivot over to Janelle. And I want to ask Janelle, because even as we spoke about food culture and the food environment that is prevalent in Barbados today, Janelle, I want you to tell us from your perspective, is there a shift in the culture or the perspective of physical education and its value in the same way that we're being influenced by the Western world or the more developed countries in terms of how we eat? Are we being influenced perhaps in a positive way to jog more, to spend more time in the gym? Is this something that is widespread? Is this something that is perhaps being seen across class lines so that people who are more middle class are the ones spending money in the gym and jogging and so on? Or, what is happening to us? What is our attitude, our national attitude, if there can be such, towards physical education and physical activity on the whole?
Thanks for the question, Denise. No, it's interesting, as Nicole would have said, in terms of the change in our culture. I believe that our grandparents, by virtue of what they had to do, they were more active than most people now. And because of the lifestyle change as well, that causes challenges to how people see physical activity being important in their lives. Now, the thing about it is that, funny enough, physical education has taken on a whole new perspective within the last 10 to 15 years as it relates to its importance globally. However, we still, in my opinion, do not take physical education as seriously as we need to here. Even as we speak with the challenges that we have, we still have serious challenges as it relates to physical education and how it is administered throughout all of our schools. Now, why is that? For the most part, a lot of Bajans like to focus on their health when it comes to the time around crop over time, or when they're forced to do it in terms of having to make a lifestyle change in terms of if their health has gone too far to the left. So then we have to ensure now that that is not the case, that people see movement as important to the development of their children. So because healthy and active children will become healthy and active adults, okay? Now, the problem is that for the most part, we have a value for the academic excellence in Barbados. And that's through the social mobility. Most of us have achieved everything through our degrees and that sort of thing. And I get that. However, we tend to want to take physical activity away from our children, especially when they're in that spectrum of the exam time, whether it's common entrance exam, CSEC, CXE, we want to take the physical activity away, and we should be allowing for the children to be engaging in the activity so that they can manage their time better, manage stress better. It helps with their cognitive and intellectual development, all of those things. However, we don't value the physical education as much as we should, because we think, or we see it as the children are outside playing, the children are outside running around. And that is something that needs to stop. Like Shauntee would have said, our physical education teachers within our schools are advocates for our children, whether it be within just physical education itself or pursuing sporting excellence. And we know that it is an activity that is contributing to their overall development. And we need to be supportive of our children, because at the end of the day, if you are not healthy, health is wealth. If you're not healthy, you are not going to be able to operate at a high level. You're not going to be able to be productive. You're going to fall ill all of the time. And it is something that we need to take stock of and understand that all aspects of the curriculum, including physical education, needs to be given that respect and to support our children in being more active.
Thank you, Janelle, for those comments. And what we are, in essence, seeing, we are recognizing a need for a shift in our thinking with respect to how we value physical activity or physical education and how we value what we choose to eat. Now, I'm going to direct my next question to Dr. Lewis. And Dr. Lewis, with our discussion so far about, shifting, changing cultural norms with respect to foods and how we feel about foods and how we engage with physical activity and so on, we recognize, as we said in our opening comments, and as you corroborated, that many of our children, far too many of our children, are obese. What, in your opinion, is leading to this shift? Why are we seeing so many obese children? Because yes, I was a child several years ago, but when I grew up, seeing an obese child was not something that was very common. What is it that is causing us to see this surge in obese children? And what are the challenges with that reality? And how can we begin to combat? And I know that's a lot, so I'm going to ask you to try to deal with it as succinctly as possible. Why are we seeing this change with respect to the amount of obese children that we're seeing? And what can we really do to counter it?
Thank you so much for your question. I think that the research is pretty clear in terms of the reasons we're seeing this surge. The biggest factors would be a decrease in physical activity. We have a culture now that encourages children to have an increase in screen time, right? And so whereas the recommendation is no more than an hour of screen time, we find that children sit for hours either in front of the TV or their devices. Like we've said, COVID has not made it any easier because now our education is online. And so children are even more engaged with the virtual space. So there's a lack of physical activity. In addition to this, though, diet is a huge component. And so, like I said before, we are finding trends where children are accessing high fat, high sugar, high salt diets, more so than the traditional diets. Now, I want to make it clear that our traditional diets, we're not all healthy, which is why when we look at the statistics today, we see a large percentage of our older population who have a non-communicable disease. That said, there were healthy aspects of it that we are veering away from. For example, the family pot, the whole concept of cooking at home. We find that a lot of children are now engaging with fast food. We've had a large percentage of children that have said that they use fast food at least 3 to 4 times a week. And that is staggering. We know that fast foods are usually high in salt, the sugars, and the fats. The concept of a snack, moving away from a snack being a fruit that you can just run around and pick in the environment while you're playing with your friends. No, a snack is something in a package. And we know that the ultra-processed foods interact in a way with our bodies that leads to things like obesity. So definitely the increased access to unhealthy foods and decreased physical activity is what is contributing in a very strong way to the rates of childhood obesity that we are seeing. We do not have a supportive environment for our children, unfortunately, either within the schools or around us. And so we have to look at things like marketing and advertising to children, making sure that the school environment is safe so that the access to water and fruit is more so than the access to unhealthy snacks, right? And that we don't provide too much options because at the end of the day, children are still children, right? And so they're going to choose they're going to veer towards certain things. In terms of what is the concern with it though, I think our biggest concern is that we know that childhood obesity puts these children at increased risk for the development of non-communicable diseases and from young. We know that persons who develop NCDs such as diabetes and high blood pressure from young are more likely to have a more aggressive course. So we're looking at not just the diagnosis, but what is the outcome? We talk about things, for example, like kidney failure. We talk about things like the rate of heart attacks and strokes and amputations. That's a big discussion now. And we're finding that younger persons are not only being diagnosed, but we are seeing these very life-altering outcomes. So we're not only having a decrease in the length of life, but we're having a decrease in the quality of life. And we believe that it is linked to the high levels of obesity in childhood and adolescence. And unless we do something about it, we are going to certainly see a progression in these negative trends.
Thank you so much for those comments. And I want to link what you have said to the entire question of our mental health and our mental well-being. So I'm going to skip over to Ms. Walters. And very often we've heard that the eating of certain foods can actually be linked to our emotions. It can be an emotional act, as it were, to eat certain foods. People talk about comfort foods. People talk about eating certain foods when they are in a particular mood, or people may eat certain foods in particular types of social settings when they're very happy, or people may binge on certain foods when they're feeling sad or when they're feeling depressed. Have you been seeing among young people these types of trends where there's a link between emotional health and well-being and bad food practices? That's the first question I'm asking. Have you been seeing that link with respect to young people? And how, if you have seen that link, how have you attempted to address it in terms of any types of interventions you may have tried with such young people?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm trying to remember which panelist it was earlier. I think it was Ms. Elliott, who would have spoken about the fact that for many persons, food has become a drug. And the reality is that food has the ability, or certain types of food have the ability to change our mood. And the same way that persons would wish to, or would try to use a drug in order to feel better, persons turn to food in order to feel better. So you would find that a lot of persons, when they have a mood disturbance, when their mood becomes low or they're feeling depressed, they may not necessarily be diagnosed as depressed, but they're feeling what we would just say in ordinary parlance in Barbados as depressed. They may turn to something which is going to give them a rush of energy. Most of the time it's unhealthy stuff. Most of the time it's chocolate or really sweet things to give you a rush. And then usually after that, what happens is that you crash. So they go after that rush time and time again, eating more and more sweet things. Then there are other persons who, it may not be the sweetest things, but things that they love, things that bring them comfort, things that help them to feel safe. So a lot of the fried things, a lot of the processed foods, again, a lot of the things that you can just go and buy. And then the reality is though, when you are not feeling your best mentally, lots of times you don't have the energy to get up and go and cook something that is healthy. You don't have the desire, you don't have the drive. So persons also tend to turn to these fast foods, tend to ordering in, tend to grab whatever there is that they can find in order to eat. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. In terms of how we address it, I think it's quite difficult in the school setting to address what the students are eating, given the fact that in a lot of cases, the parents are the ones who are supplying what they are eating. So when we say to students, for instance, when you go to the canteen or when you have to buy lunch, you need to choose some of the healthier things. You can't just have chips and ketchup every day, chips and ketchup, chips and ketchup. You can't have fried chicken for breakfast every day. It is not healthy. It is, but this is what I have. This is what is available at the canteen one. And this is what my mommy told me to buy, or this is what I have money to get. So I think that we need to not just look at psychoeducation and teaching the students how to make healthy lifestyle choices, but we also need to work on changing the choices, just as Dr. Lewis was just speaking about, changing the choices that they have, the options that they have when it comes to the canteen, when it comes to the vendors on the school compound. Because if you're hungry and you only have 3 or 4 things to choose from, you will choose the 3 or 4 things. I think that it is a work in progress, and it's going to take some time, because we're not just changing the culture at the school, but we're going to need to change the culture in the homes, in the communities, in the fast food world. But if each of us puts our hands to the plow, I believe it can be done.
Thank you so much for that response. I'm going to go over to Ms. Elliott now, and I want to touch on something that she began to discuss in her contribution earlier. She was speaking a bit about differences, about gender, and I really want her to explain for us, or at least perhaps explore for us, if she has recognized any differences in approaches to food consumption among boys and girls. Have you recognized there's any difference in terms of the consumption of food? Do girls tend to be the ones that eat more healthy or unhealthy, or vice versa? And what are the implications if there are differences in their approaches to food consumption, or if there are differences in their approaches to nutrition and good nutrition? What are the implications for how we go about teaching this in the school setting, if there are these differences among boys and girls?
Well, there is a difference, and it depends sometimes on where, again, it comes down to sometimes when it comes to the socioeconomic background of the person, it comes down to the community in which that person might have come from, and then you have the age group. So you find that the older girls who are more into like their self-esteem, you hear them, they will usually they're gonna drink only water, and they're gonna pack their own lunch and stuff like that. But you have the younger ones who obviously some of them still want to get friends time, they want to get play time. So the quickest thing is to run off to the fastest place to get the food from, if it's the canteen, if it's in secondary school, if it's in primary school, if it's just to eat a snack from the snack vendor and not necessarily have the school meals. They tend to run towards that because obviously they want to get in their time. Whereas the older girls may want to, they're not in a rush. They have their sit down and chat so they can pack lunch. They may drink water. Whereas with the boys, a lot of boys just they don't purchase anything. You will say, hey, I'm going to have a snack. And this afternoon when I go on my way home, I'm going to purchase something. And you will find that because obviously they're going to socialize different to the girls. However, the impact when it comes to their blood sugars and when it comes to the hypertension and when it comes to obesity, unfortunately, if they're consuming the high sugar drinks, if they're consuming the high fat foods, they're going to have similar outcomes as it relates to their health, unless they're where the boys may be athletic or the girls may be an athletic type of girl. But however, being very athletic or having a very vigorous, like how Miss Denny would have said before, having a large amount of physical activity does not excuse bad eating. So you could be the fittest person, and I always say that there are persons who could be lifestyle is full of activity, but you still eat the incorrect foods, you are going to have a similar outcome. If you are eating the high fat foods, no matter what you do, you are still going to need to have balance the two, equal physical activity and equal as it relates to your food lifestyle. And when it comes to the boys will most times be more physical than the girls. And so they have an advantage when it comes to that in terms of being able to burn those calories. They have less issues when it comes to hormonal issues. So obviously in terms of the metabolism and burning and having to worry about things that girls and women have to worry about, they have a slight edge. However, if they're sedentary and they just sit and play games or they just sit outside and they will have similar outcomes as girls. But again, it all comes down to the communities that they come from. It comes from the socioeconomic groups, and I know people don't like to hear that, but it is truthful. You find that persons from within certain socioeconomic groups will only have most times water, or they may have a fruit juice one-off times, but they do try to practice just having water for the kids. So you will see the kids coming in with the bottled water, or you will see them come in with a packed lunch. Whereas persons who tend to not have as much access to money or have those things within their community, those persons tend to come to school with money, or they put together with other students to buy lunch. And so then obviously the choices that they may have to choose from may not always be the best because they don't have that many options to choose from.
Okay, thank you so much for those insightful comments. Janelle, I'm going to come over to you now. And we recognize that there are variables that impact on how people access healthy nutrition, healthy, nutritious meals, as we would have heard just now, socioeconomic factors, socialization factors, etc. But when it comes to our approach to physical activity and our commitment to a subject like physical education, what have you recognized as some of the challenges that keep people away from this physical activity? Is there a peer pressure, particularly among young people, that it's really not that important? We know there are lots of young people who love sport and are very committed and engaged in physical activity because they want to get athletic scholarships, or they just want to be professional sports people in various areas, etc. But we know that there's also, a kind of disinterest among another section of the population with respect to physical activity and how valuable it could be. What are some of the challenges that seem to be preventing people from becoming more physically active and being more committed to physical activity?
Thank you, Denise. Yes, there are a lot of different reasons. First off, persons will say that they're very busy. And as I would have said earlier, all of us have very busy lifestyles, but you have to make that commitment to yourself to engage in any sort of physical activity because it's important to you. And that's what I would have said earlier. If your belief system says this is not important, you're not going to make that time. You're not going to carve out that time for the day. And the thing about it is that as busy as you are, you can find time to exercise. It only takes sometimes 4 minutes with a protocol called Tabata. 4 minutes, 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, 8 times, and you've gotten your exercise for the day if you are really busy. Okay, so that's the first one. Then sometimes things happen in life and people may get injured, they may get into accidents and that sort of thing. And because of that, they tend to say, well, I can't do anything. But we have to recognize there's always a way to modify whatever exercise there is for you to still be active. And it's good to do that, because if you allow a particular injury to stop you from doing anything, that may lead to it worsening. And then it's going to be harder for you to get back in the game, so to speak. all right? Then we have some persons in terms of medical conditions like asthma. That's one of the things that's big in the schools. So a child would say to a PE teacher, I'm asthmatic. Yes, okay, you're asthmatic, but what does that mean? Does that stop you? It may limit you, but again, there can be modifications and accommodations for that child. And I think part of this process too comes with education in terms of our doctors being able to give parents the right information as it relates to, no, if your child engages in physical activity, it's not going to harm them. It could actually assist in the asthma getting better. I remember my brother, he was asthmatic, and all through his school life, he was very active. He played basketball and so on. He just had to manage it. And we have to teach our children to manage these sorts of things and to assist within the school environment with the PE teachers, just to give the information so that the children can still engage, or adults in general. Then we have persons that sometimes we don't even realize that we're leading a kind of voluntary sedentary lifestyle. In that, let's take, for example, right now, all of us are sitting down. And I don't think we recognize how much we sit during the day. And that's one of the things. We sit in our cars, we sit at our desks. And those are things that limit us from engaging in health and more movement. And we have to be more conscious of things that we could do to break out of that cycle. Like for me, when I came into ministry, I was moving less. So one of the things that I am actually doing is I'm going to invest in a table to put on my table so that I'm standing instead of sitting. But that's something that I've decided for myself. And it's a case where everybody within their life would need to look at what they are doing to see where they could tweak in terms of putting more physical activity into their lifestyle. And then there are the persons that we talked about that are just sedentary. That's the challenge. Some people just don't want to move, but our bodies were designed to move. And the more we move, the better. I think one of the things that I want to say is that the messaging as it relates to the movement and the nutrition has to be cohesive, because we can't do without the other. And I know it's a case where some people will say you can't exercise your way out of an unhealthy diet, but we have got to be more supportive of people who will engage in the exercise, and then allow for them to make those gradual changes in the nutrition, because people will rebel, and people have shown that they would want to rebel if you just want to make them change everything one time. So it has to be systemic and give them that opportunity to make that gradual shift.
That's an excellent point. And before I move from you, I want to build on that a bit, because you talked about providing support to people. And I'm looking at it within the context of a whole school environment, because we are looking particularly at quality education. And how can we foster this in a school environment where it becomes a whole school activity, and we don't see movement and health as something that only belongs to physical education or as something that belongs to health and nutrition, but we can see it coming out in all our various subject areas. We can have an integrated approach. So I'm speaking to the educator in you now. How can we have that integrated approach towards leveraging the importance of health and movement, etc.? And I'm thinking particularly of the arts and including dance and helping people to see that movement can be fun.
Yes. Well, those challenges I brought up were just in general, because, we have to still think of our audience as well. Within the school environment, the ministry has started that process, both the Ministry of Health and Wellness and now the Ministry of Education, because the drafting and the crafting of the Barbados National School Nutrition Policy is going to be something that is going to help guide that entire process. So it is at the stage now where it is finalized, and now we're looking to seek to implement. Now, the policy is divided into obviously nutrition, and then in terms of the physical activity and so on within schools. And now you talked about it. in terms of dance and other things that we can put into the curriculum, we have to recognize that every subject can integrate some form of movement. Okay, and we have to be able to support our teachers that are coming into the system in terms of helping them with how do you get that done. All right, I think that's the first thing, because we want to tell people about integrating things, but we need to also show them. Right now, within the physical education environment, that subject area has integration in a seamless manner. All right, now when we talk about building a school culture as well, the policy speaks to what other activities other than the structured activities within physical education are you going to implement within your schools? Are you going to have dance clubs? Or are you going to, let's say, do a lunchtime activity every week or every 2 days? It depends on the school, because you have different skills and different competencies in terms of the teachers at the school, and they may want to craft their own unique way of having that initiative done. Like for this example, for Education Month, we have reintroduced the Hype Days, Healthy Youth Through Physical Education. But we have asked for the guidance counselors, those persons teaching the health, to be in a collaborative organization with the PE teachers, so that there's a more dynamic approach to how we are going to approach these activities that are going to provide the correct learning outcomes for our children. So I think that the opportunity is right for everyone once we want to collaborate and work together in order to come up with innovative ways to create a school culture that movement becomes something natural. And I can tell you that has started. Our physical education teachers, they are committed to ensuring that we support the children, but we need some other things now that are going to really cement that. And one of the things that we're doing is, in terms of the action plan, in terms of physical activity, is to bring some key players together in order to assist the ministry, because our resources are limited, and therefore we are going to need help from those various stakeholders in order to facilitate the resources needed to our schools.
Thank you so much, Janelle, for those insightful remarks. And I'm going to link what you just said in terms of creating a new school culture, because if we're going to do what we want to do in terms of promoting quality living through healthy minds and bodies, it's going to require wide stakeholder engagement. And one of the key stakeholders in all of this is the parents. So I'm going to ask Dr. Lewis now to look particularly at the role of parents. How can we begin to sensitize parents in ways that that they can connect with? You know, this talk about healthy lifestyles and about consuming too much sugar and the need to consume less sugar and to use less sweetened beverages and to use more water. This messaging has been with us for a very long time. Yet perhaps we are only seeing incremental changes across our societies. In your experience, in terms of your working with parents and parent groups and various organizations, what can we begin to do more so that we can engage our parents more and sensitize them so that they can understand what their role is in this cultural shift?
I am very happy to hear that question, because we have to acknowledge that while the school nutrition policy speaks to the provision of a healthy environment within the school, health and nutrition starts at home. And therefore, it is important that the parents must be key stakeholders. And in order for them to be key stakeholders, they have to buy into the process. We are looking at a situation, we talk about the parents. What we need is, believe it or not, greater education. We might say the messages are out there, but I think that a lot of parents do not understand the severity of the problem. And they are certainly not as educated as it relates to simple things like reading labels, what may seem simple to us, but it's actually a lot more complex when you really look at it. From my experience working with parents, so the first thing I will say is that we need to do a lot more groundwork with the parent teachers associations. The Heart and Stroke Foundation Barbados, through the Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition, has held a number of parents' forums, and they've also been involved with the PTAs in order to educate and empower parents. We also need for individual persons, health practitioners, nurses, persons who are in the space who will be able to reach out to PTAs and to make this information available. There are two things that I think from interacting with parents is often a shocker for them. Parents often do not understand, when we talk about sugar reduction, the amount of sugars that their children are being exposed to. I'll give you an example. We know that the average child, according to World Health Organization and according to American Heart Association, should use no more than 6 teaspoons of sugar in a day, right? That's about 24 grams. However, the common box juices that we see around contain sometimes 30, 40 teaspoons of sugar in that one box juice, right? The soft drinks that are out there contain as much as 64 grams of sugar in 250 mils. And so what I have found is that when I have showed the parents the sugar bag, I've said, look, this is what you're feeding your children versus what they should have. There is a shock and almost outrage. They say, but how is it even legal to put that amount of sugar? How did we not know this? So there are little issues that we need to address. How do you read that food label so that you know what you're giving your child? The other thing that we find parents complaining a lot about is the picky eater. So how do you prepare meals for the children in such a way that they accept them, healthy meals in such a way that the children enjoy them and embrace them? And so all of these are things that we need to engage parents on. Are you going to continue to get a pushback? We also need parents to understand that, well, like Nicole said, you're not going to see necessarily the effects now, that you are setting up your child ultimately for failure. In the same way that you are concerned about their education standard in terms of how they do in common entrance and what school they pass for and, results at CSC, you must be more concerned about their nutritional intake and their physical activity, because their health is what is going to ultimately set them up for success. It doesn't matter how well they're doing at school. If they're not healthy, they're not going to have a long quality of life. So it is helping parents, giving them that perspective of long term, not just in the short term, and providing support. Some of the other things we can do for parents, not only telling them prepare healthier meals, but bringing in a nutritionist, for example, to show them how they can do so. And we need to target schools and school districts to make this a reality. The alternative snack list that Barbados Heart and Stroke produced, and that was AB led by Nicole, who is here with us today, all right? That's an important project, because one of the questions that we were asked by parents, you're telling us not to use these sweetened beverages, you're telling us not to give the children certain types of snacks. Well, what can we give them? And so providing resources like that, and we are very much looking forward to releasing that information to the public. We've already released it to the Ministry of Education for their internal use. But providing information like that for parents, so when they go into the supermarkets, they're not hurting their heads as to what to pick up, providing alternatives, providing support, and then supportive groups within the community, so that not only do they understand what needs to be done, but now they're able to take the necessary steps to get it done, and helping them finally to understand that it is not do as I say and not as I do. It is a whole of family approach. So the lifestyle changes that we're asking you to implement for the children, we are asking for the entire family to implement. We are asking that you sit down, you have meals, and you're all eating from the same pot. We're asking that, especially evenings and weekends, that you're all going out as a family to exercise, rather than telling children, well, you don't go outside and run about. You're actually out there with them, engaging in family physical activity. That modeling is what helps to set those habits in place for our children. A number of things, but if we break it up in small pieces, we can get the information over to our parents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis, for that focus on community empowerment at the level of the home, having parents empowered, and having parents not just preach the gospel, but having them model it for their children. That is extremely important, as much as it's important for teachers themselves to also model it, because as teachers will speak to their students about eating healthy, the students also need to see their teachers doing the right thing. Now that's going to take me back to our nutritionists, where we're going to begin to look now at, I spoke to her earlier about the culture of food and the culture of eating in Barbados and how that has shifted and changed over the years, and particularly as she identified during the COVID-19 pandemic when so many people developed their own cook shops, etc. But we still have our traditional foods that we love, and we're approaching that favorite time of the year, November, Independence, and then Christmas follows directly after, where there's the eating of the conkeys and the coconut bread and the cassava pone and the black cake and all that type of thing. And then we have the traditional pudding and sauce every Saturday. How do we get to adjust these foods? Can we actually adjust these foods so that they become more healthy? Is there a way to tweak these and make them a little bit more palpable in terms of health and nutrition? I have certainly seen cassava pone being sold at a supermarket with reduced sugar. I'm just asking, what can we do to maintain the attractiveness of our foods, our local foods, while making them a little bit more healthy, or a lot more healthy?
Yes. So yes, you can. I mean, it would be a hypocrite if I sit here and tell you that I don't like steamed pudding, that I don't like our traditional foods. I do love those foods just like everybody else who enjoy those items as well. There has already been some work done with those items. It would have been back in probably about 3-4 years ago. And there's a book that the Diabetes Association has named Keep the Culture, but Cut the Fat. And in that book, we would have done some modifications on the local food items. I know the QEH hospital, the nutrition department, there also has a book that they have modified those food items. And sometimes the modification doesn't come in changing the ingredient. It comes in the amount you eat. So you can have cocoa, it's okra and it's cornmeal, it's a vegetable and a starch, but it's how much of that you eat. So we know we love to eat it until it puts us to sleep. No, you don't need to have that much. So everything doesn't come now and saying, oh, you have to take everything away from it, but it's how much of it you eat. In terms of having sweet bread, you can have sweet bread. You can cut down on some of the sugar and you can put some raisins or you can put some mixed peel. And I know there are people out there who like that. So adding some more of that and taking away some more of the sugar. Another one that we love, grape cake. Fruits are generally sweet. So you just need to have those fruits and also not to have a large amounts because obviously you're adding alcohol and alcohol will carry its own sugar content as well. Another favorite that we may have, Moby. We don't have to use Moby syrup. We can boil our own Moby and then we can decide how much sugar that we want to have in there before having to use the syrup. Because with the syrup, you really can't tell. Because most of them don't come with the nutritional facts in terms of this amount of syrup contains this amount of sugar. So if you have made your own, you know exactly how much of that. And that goes for any other type of fruit juice. If you make your own fruit juice, you know how much sugar is in that, and you know what you can switch out to make it a bit healthier. So we can have those items that we love. I know fish cakes are coming up. You can grate some carrots into your fish cake batter. You can leach some of the salt from your saltfish. You can use, and people will say ew, but tuna in fish cakes tastes the same as fish cakes with saltfish. So you can try that. I know everybody's palate is not the same, but if you're looking to make small changes, those are things that you can do. Macaroni pie, I know this is a hands up, throw down for Barbadian, even though it's not our national dish. I know Rihanna would have said it's her favorite dish, so everybody in the world think it's our national dish. That is one of those items that for some reason we somehow will probably never try to get people, will never get people to stop eating completely. But in terms of trying to not stop them from getting it, to stop them from eating it, we can go the other way. You can have macaroni pie and it doesn't have to have any cheese and it can taste it as that same way. You can get more protein if you use cashew nuts or almond nuts. You can add some nutritional yeast. As it relates to the macaroni used, there's so many varieties of macaroni. There's sweet potato, there's split pea, there's black eyed peas. There are so many different type of pastas that we can use now that you don't have to use the traditional regular macaroni to do it in, and it adds variety, so it makes it look a little bit more appealing to the eye. I know there are some people who already add canned vegetables and things like carrots to their macaroni, but you don't have to add it in the amounts that you can say, oh my goodness, this has too much of this item. But as you gradually add something, you're able to your palate is able to take on more and more over time, and so it's a gradual process. I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to be able to say if you went from drinking 5 sweet drinks, you're going to go from drinking 5 sweet drinks to drinking none. Because in some cases, we did this before. We had a situation where we said we had a couple of six farmers who they were doing a experiment when it comes to sugar sweetened beverages and sugar on a whole, and they decided for a week they were going to give up sugar. They went cold turkey and gave up sugar, and a lot of them they really couldn't cope. They were fidgeting. Some of them literally broke down in tears. Like they would want to smell the drink, or they would want to smell the candy, or they would say, "Can I just unwrap it just to hear the wrapper and just smell it?" And so you during that time, they were like, at the end, they were like, they had parents that called and said, listen, if I don't watch XYZ 24/7, they're going to cheat in this experiment because they're not coping well. So it goes to show if you try to get someone to go off cold turkey, it won't happen, and it's a gradual process. If you're accustomed drinking 5 or 8 drinks a day, and which some people do that, and a lot of people, especially when you have calling programs, will call and say, hey, I drink 10 drinks a day. How am I going to move from that? And you move by drinking one less every time. And then eventually you can take half of what you would drink and add half water to that, and then you eventually gradually go. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to be able to do it in a month time, but it'll happen gradually. Just take the step, be open-minded about it, and just add, as I say, if you like beef stew, add some carrots, grated carrots, some squash pumpkin to it, something that you won't be able to see or taste, but it is there. And so your palate begins to get accustomed to the food, and then eventually you can add it where you can see and it doesn't bother you. So those small things, we don't need to get rid of our cultural foods. We just need to know how much of it to eat and how we can tweak certain things within it as well. And as Kia said, there's an alternative food guide for our, well, it can be used by anyone, and we had it geared towards school age children in terms of their snacks and their drinks that they choose to give persons the ability to see what's in their case food. We work it down very simply for them to understand how much fat, how much fiber, how much carbohydrates, how much sodium, and to give them, instead of having to go into the supermarket now and to try to look for those items themselves, and to check the food labels, because label reading for everybody is not that easy. We have broken them down. We went into supermarkets and we have seen those items and we have picked them, and we haven't said, well, hey, children shouldn't eat cookies altogether. We said, hey, some kids can still want a little animal cookie. They may want a little cracker or something. So we found the best alternative that we could find given the nutritional facts, and we gave that as an option. So I'm hoping, as Kia said, Dr. Lewis, that we are able to see it happen. We're able to see it maybe in supermarkets themselves, or put it up in places where persons can see them and be able to use them with their kids and even for themselves as adults.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, we've been talking a lot about cultural shifts and the need for us as a community, as a nation, to see things differently with respect to our health, how we eat, how we move, how we choose foods, etc., at the family level, and so on at the school level. When it comes, however, to the question of our mental health and our mental well-being, I find that as a society, we still have a long way to go with respect to how we see this whole issue of mental well-being or even mental illness. You know, there's still a lot of stigma attached to individuals needing to access mental health, or individuals being able to take time to take care of their own mental well-being. With respect to all the work that has been done or that is ongoing with respect to that cultural shift in how we see food and how we interact with food and how we need to move and take better care of our physical bodies, I want to ask Ms. Walters if she is seeing a similar move in terms of our need to look after our mental well-being. Are Bajans becoming more open to this idea of accessing counseling or being seen by a counselor? I know years ago when I was in school, some children said I would never go to the guidance counselor. There was still a whole set of suspicion. And I know that even in terms of adults accessing counseling, there is still a level of suspicion. There's still some taboo attached to it. Is this still so within the school setting? Do you find more children are coming forward to deal with their mental health issues? And what can we do, or what can someone like you, who is a guidance counselor, do to help individuals be more comfortable with looking after their mental health?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think there has been a shift in the society as a whole, and definitely within the school system, regarding the perceptions of mental health and seeking assistance for mental health. I think over the past 2 years, COVID has forced quite a number of persons to reach out for mental health assistance, even persons who would have thought that they may never have had to do that in their entire lifetime. It's unfortunate that they had to be forced, but there has been a shift. I think persons now are more open to seeking counseling, to seeking therapy, to getting mental health assistance. Within the school, what we have done, we have encouraged our students and spoken to our students about our bodies altogether and the fact that our minds and our brains are organs just like any other organ within our body. And that means that they can be compromised, they can be damaged in an accident, there can be some injury to it. And the same energy that we give to physical injuries, when we rush to the doctor or we take medication, we need to give to our mental health, whether it is our thought process or whether there's an actual physical injury to the brain. And I think students are starting to realize and see the mind and the brain as organs, just as all the others, and they need to be taken care of. I think one of the other things that is important when it comes to mental health and maintaining good mental health, and even the decision to seek mental health services, is to have somebody to support you, to have some person who may not be able to fix anything for you, but who is going to be there, the person who's going to walk with you. The same way that if we needed some person to attend the physician with us, or a shoulder to lean on to take us to get a particular test or an x-ray or whatever, we need to be able to have that and provide that for students. And the guidance counselors in the secondary schools for sure provide that for the students. Lots of times they will come and say, Mom, I just want to say hello. I just want to come and sit with you for a few minutes. I don't really want to talk about anything, but I just want to be here because I know that if I come, that this is a safe place for me. So I think that not just the guidance counselors, but all school personnel need to start working on being safe spaces for our students. And then by extension, we're hoping that as the students understand that the mind and the brain are organs and we need to take care of them, that they can share this information with their parents and it can filter up and filter down.
Okay, I'm not finished with you yet. Added to that, we have heard, as we've been discussing, there's a need for that whole school approach. There's the need for that community approach as we look at the need to exercise, as we look at the need to eat well. How do you see parents being brought into the equation with respect to dealing with their children's mental health issues? How do you see schools and parents connecting and working together to better cater to our children's sense of emotional well-being?
Okay, realistically, there's nothing that we can do with the students or with the children without the parents being involved. So any intervention, any conversation, anything with the students within our schools, the parents need to be made aware and they need to be involved. And not just a telephone call saying this is what is happening with your child or this is what we are doing, but we need to make sure that they are actively involved in the process. So from our standpoint, sometimes that means that we need to go visit the parents. We need to sit with them in their environment and have a conversation with them. We need to be able to help them to understand what it is that's going on with their child or in terms of guardians with their ward and how they can help. What can they do from their position to assist us within the school? Lots of times parents, it is not that they are unwilling, they just don't have the resources or they don't know what they can do. And I find that when you have students who are having mental health challenges and you really reach out to the parents and connect with them and help them to understand that you are there to assist, they tend to take the information and run with it. They tend to do whatever they can to assist their child. So I think in every intervention, we need to make sure that the parents are involved and that they are actively involved, not just being informed.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have been looking at promoting quality living. I want to get the right theme. We've been looking at promoting quality education through healthy minds and bodies, and we have emphasized a lot the need for our children, the need for our adults, the need for everyone to eat well, to make the best choices with respect to what we consume, with respect to how we look after our mental well-being and with respect to how we exercise. And I think we're all preaching from the same, singing from the same hymn sheet with respect to those connected ideas of how important it is to look after ourselves, to look after our mental well-being. I want us in our final comments to look at the types of interventions that we need to promote in our various areas so that the education that our students receive is indeed quality education, because there's a connection. We don't want to look at these factors in silos. You don't want to look at them in a separated way. We know that the body is connected with the mind. As Janelle said, movement is connected to what we consume and how our body is able to use energy. You know, everything is connected. And I want to ask each of you in your final comment to suggest strategies that we can promote in your various spheres. What can we promote so that we ensure that the messaging is clear and that what we are encouraging our students and our parents to do will indeed impact the quality education that our students receive? We want to start with you, Janelle.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Now, well, one of the strategies I think that we have to do, and we're doing it here now, is coming together. I think for too long, as you would have said, we would have been in our individual corners trying to solve the problem on our own. And I feel very encouraged of late, because I am seeing persons being more receptive to having that collaborative approach. And that is the way to go. As I would have said earlier, the first strategy that we're looking to employ in terms of the action plan is getting the key stakeholders in place. Because as I said, the Ministry of Education cannot do it alone. And that is an important strategy to make sure that we have all of those stakeholders in place, because we have to talk to one another. We have to let each other know what are our strengths, our weaknesses, where we need the help, and having that conversation and continuing to have conversations, not just a one-off conversation. I was very fortunate today to attend actually a workshop hosted by PAHO, where we were talking about the reduction of sugar and salt within our foods. And it's a case where I think until we are able to see all the perspectives of everyone, we will not have a full understanding of the problem. So that is the first thing I would say. As it relates to strategies for my area specifically, I think one, in terms of engaging our physical educators a little bit more, and in terms of supporting them within their efforts within the schools. We talked earlier about parent engagement. I think there needs to be more dialogue between those two sets of persons, because it is a case where I think parents need to be educated as it relates to the relevance of the subject towards their children's lives, in that what physical education allows for them to do is to be able to go into many sectors in terms of employment and so on. And it is not just a case of thinking about Barbados as their oyster. They can go overseas. Even when in terms of athletic scholarships, if they're pursuing sporting excellence, it's a case where these are the conversations that need to be had. And I think there needs to be a little bit more strategic approach as it relates to allowing for parents and their physical educators to have a greater dynamic where that is concerned. Now, as it relates to the other areas in terms of nutrition, I guess I could let the others speak on that. But for me, I see everything as connected. And from here on, and I always want to hear that one cohesive message as it relates to all these stakeholders coming together, so that people understand the physical, the nutrition, and the mental are going to be one. You have to look at all of them, not just one.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Dr. Lewis?
So my final comments as it relates to, in terms of implementation and strategies, my call would be for a strong implementation of the current school nutrition policy. Government and Ministry of Education have taken a step in the right direction. Research has shown in other territories that a school nutrition policy is very helpful in terms of changing the health attitudes. And that is what we're really after, the health attitudes of our students. If we're able to do that, we're going to have long-term change. We're looking at changing mindsets and lifestyles. So what I would advocate for is a strong implementation and monitoring system for the current school nutrition policy. As the former presenter would have said, we need to have strong stakeholder involvement, not just in the process of planning like we have seen, but also in the implementation. We have a number of persons in their various areas of expertise. We need those persons to continue to talk to each other. We need for continued communication, clear and open communication as to where we are in the process, where we hope to go, and we need to bring those human resources in so that when inevitably with any nutrition policy, with any policy, you're going to find flaws in implementation. You're going to find roadblocks, but it is having a key team of persons from all sectors involved so that when you meet those roadblocks, you are able to adequately handle them. You have the expertise, you have the backing of research, you have the experience of other persons who have successfully implemented school nutrition policies to say, this is the way to go, this is what worked for us, and this did not work quite so well. So my final comment would be, we've had these discussions for a long time, and we continue to have these discussions, and I think we're going to have them for a long time to come. What we need to do now is to strongly implement the things that we do know and work on continuously adjusting the system so that it works for all stakeholders and ultimately it works to the benefit of the health of our children and the health of our nation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. Final comments? Nicole? Nicole Griffith?
So my comments will be very similar to Dr. Lewis and to Janelle. We all need to have stakeholder buy-in. That's the only way that any policy, any type of instrument that we are planning to use will work. And along with having that instrument and having it do it a step-by-step process and getting it into implementation stage, is to ensure that what we preach is the same thing that we are doing, and not to allow the influences where if we are going to say that we are going to have healthy lifestyles, we are not going to promote unhealthy lifestyles in praises that we may give to our students, to praises that we may give to schools, and use healthier alternatives. If you're going to give a praise to a school, instead of giving it a large school cake, we're going to give it a water fountain. We need to have those things so that the kids can see that we as adults are serious. We can't have half of the population of the staff having a buy-in in the situation where we're going to have the staff walking down the corridor drinking a large sugar sweetened beverage on a water Wednesday or a holiday day. If we're all going to say we're going to drink water, yes, I know we can't force persons to do things, but we want to see, at least if you're going to drink it where they can't see it, because they don't want to make them believe, or we don't want to have bad habits, showing bad habits and expecting to get good habits out of the persons that we have to influence. And that's generally my do as we say and not just say and expect that they're going to do. We have to lead by example, and we need to show them the example that we want them to follow.
Thank you so much for those comments. And our final comments from Ms. Walters.
Thank you. I do concur with all the comments which came before. The only things that I would add is that we need to remember that health is interconnected. And in order for us to get anything done within the school, population, within the school plant. We need to realize how interconnected we need to be as well. I think in terms of the mental health aspect of it, in terms of the guidance counselors, etc., we need to start modeling and we need to start practicing as well. We need to start using some of the techniques that we may teach the individual students within the classrooms. We need to walk into the classrooms, and in order to get the students settled, we need to lean into breath and do some breath work so that the children will not just be practicing it in class, but they have tools that they can then take with them into their homes. And the final thing that I would like to add in terms of our school plans, I think we need to create some more green spaces, some more green areas. Perhaps the schools, I know there's some schools that have water features and there's some that have ponds, places where you can go and you can sit if you need a moment, if you need to regroup, if you need to lean into breath work, so that when you are on the school compound, when you are there are options for you. It's not just a matter of go and do this on your own or go find some place to do this, but there are created spaces where we can go and have a moment to reflect or a moment to work on our mental health.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much, ladies. I am just going to focus in on a few of your closing remarks. You spoke this evening about the need for greater collaboration, for greater stakeholder engagement, for greater interconnection and modeling. You spoke of the need to eat more healthy, to reduce the amount of sugar and salt, to consume more water, the need to move more and to become more active as a part of lifestyle and as a whole school approach. You spoke of a need to adjust our cultural foods, embrace them, yes, but adjust them where we can so that they're more healthy for our consumption. You spoke about the need for greater levels of parental empowerment, parental engagement, and for a long-term change of our attitudes towards health, for greater levels of monitoring of policy so that implementation is successful. And finally, you spoke of a need for beautiful built environments and spaces where we can reflect, pause, and these spaces would hopefully promote good health of mind and great well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our panel discussion this evening. We have come to an end. Our theme for Education Month is promoting quality education through healthy minds and bodies. And this evening, we have been discussing with our panel, healthy minds and healthy bodies for quality living. And if there's nothing else that you take away from our discussion this evening, I pray and I hope that you take away the need for each of us to be accountable for ourselves, to look after ourselves, and to model best practices for healthy minds and bodies to all of our family and our friends, and certainly to our young people and our students out there. So thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, I have been your moderator, Denise J. Charles. Have a fantastic evening, everyone. Good night.